Thanks so much for being here. To give you an introduction of where these therapies come from, what we know about it, and what the Essene were. They were an ancient ascetic group who lived in Judea near the Dead Sea shore between the 2nd BC and the 1st AC. They lived in isolated communities that had abandoned the vanities of the world. The Essene were quite unique because they were the very first population that decided not to have slaves, but to serve each other. They decided to live in alignment with the earth flow and their divine nature. And they refer to themselves as Essenes, meaning sons of the sun. In this, we find links with the so-called heretical pharaoh Akhenaten, who abandoned the ancient gods in favor of Atman, represented by the solar disk. This is very intriguing if you want to do some researches on it, and you find a lot of pictures, especially in the Egyptian configuration of the sun with lots of rays coming through, which gives us an indication that both the Egyptians and the Essene had a connection with the sun energy. There was something very magical and special about this connection that both populations have explored. We know the Essene because of the Dead Scroll. I don't know if you have heard of Qumran. They have found these Dead Scrolls in the 1947, and we know about their philosophy of life and spiritual practices because of them. They didn't really attach themselves to any specific religion. They created a philosophy of life, and this is what makes the Essene quite special. Both Egyptians and Essene had holistic approaches to healing. What they had in common mainly was the spiritual esoteric knowledge and ascetic and ritual practices, traditional medicine and the use of herbs and natural remedies, hydrotherapy, ritual baths, and the use of oils, unguents, and balm for healing. The Essene recognized gender equality, and they were the very first in recognizing gender equality in their communities and the importance of the woman in their community. It is hypothesized that Mary Magdalene had connection with the Essenes due to their inclusive vision compared to other traditions of the time. Mary Magdalene was also connected to the Essene for the use of oils. I don't know if you've ever seen any representation of Mary Magdalene and Jesus, what she's anointing the feet. And Akhenaten as well was the very first mystic that used the oils as vehicle of healing, has an element that connected the divine with the earth, with its telluric energy. So both understood the importance of using oils as vehicle for energy healing. And they had different purposes inside the community. Some of them were mystics, some were philosophers, some were healers. But the ones that decided to become therapists, they had to go very, very long training. It was 7 years of training, and they were not chosen for intellectual and mental abilities, but they were chosen for their charisma, profound humanity, and the ability to manifest it in everyday life. And I feel that this still, for me, the very basic value that as therapists we have to remember. As the new age arises, a lot of people go attached to the aesthetic of what healing may look like. But at times I feel there's a bit of lack of connection with us as human beings, as we feel that the spirit is separated from the matter. As for me, being human is the most spiritual thing I can do in my life, to be fully human and to embrace my humanity to the fullest. And that elevates my spirit. So what are Egyptian Essene therapists and what they may look like? So Egyptian Essene therapists are an energy healing modality inspired by the Egyptian and Essene philosophy. And we use consecrated oils. I have very special blends that one of my students makes in New Zealand. Then we use the Milky Voice. I don't know if you have heard of the Milky Voice before. It's a voice attunement, which we believe that the body is an instrument. And when a part is dissonant, the instrument itself is out of balance. So by reharmonizing the part, we reintegrate that part in the whole of the system. And of course, simultaneously, we also use hands-on position on specific points, which are the chakras, the main chakras, secondary chakras, specific organs, nadis, meridians, and subtle bodies. The purpose of this therapy is to facilitate the natural energetic flow of the self dispose of the dysfunctional and traumatic emotions and memories to increase personal awareness. This is not a passive way to receive healing compared to Reiki. Reiki is more passive because it's hands-on. The person doesn't really talk, it's just a receiver. In this practice, the client is very much involved. So it's a very active way to receive healing, because simultaneously, while I am practicing the healing, I'm also talking to the patient. I'm asking questions, I'm investigating where the blockages are, and I invite the person to go deep down into it and exploring different parts of the self. So it's a very profound way of healing. The Egyptianist in therapeutic art connects us to a sacred breath that passes through us like a wave, allowing us to become channels between heaven and earth. The therapist becomes the bridge, a pontefice, restoring communication between the dissonant parts. Also, one very important part of this practice is that the therapist had to learn to connect with the state of consciousness beyond one's ego, thoughts, moods, and emotions, which Easterners call Atman. Atman is a Sanskrit word that means inner self or breath, and is that part of us that cannot be touched or hurt. It's our human reality that constantly lives in communion with the divine dimension. And the quality of what the patient receives is proportionate to the work that the therapist has done and is doing on themselves. So when you give healing, you also receive, and you have to work on yourself before you, of course, work with other people. But the invitation is always to have your own therapist so you can continue your self-development, because the more you work on yourself, the more capacity you have to hold spaces for other people. This approach is spiritual because it is the spirit that guides our actions, and it is holistic because it considers the person as a whole.